Hello everybody, welcome to the final video of my journey in the British qualifying tournament for the Championship. As I went into the fifth game, I had done the calculations and realised there was an extremely likely scenario where I would qualify. It's about 99% likely that I would qualify for the British finals. The only thing I had to do was not lose, and even if I lost on the tiebreakers, I would almost definitely make it through anyway. So this game did not really have much riding on it. My opponent was in a similar situation to me. We were both on 4 out of 5, or 4 out of 4 rather, going into round 5. And I was black. So in this game, I'm playing somebody who is only rated about 1800 FIDE, but they do have a few good wins under their belt. They beat a FIDE master who rated around 2200, but at his peak, he's been 2390, I think, and has also got an astounding number of IM norms, something like 13 IM norms. So the fact this player managed to beat him is very impressive. And they started with d4. I played knight to f6, knight f3. This cuts out a lot of the things I sometimes do, like the Benoni or the Budapest gambit. Here I could have played d6 going into a King's Indian, or e6 keeping things flexible, but instead I chose d5. And white could have played the move c4, leading to a Queen's Gambit. And to be honest, in this particular line with the knights on f3 and f6, I accept the gambit because white can't, well, shouldn't, play the move pawn e4 because it's already covered by my knight. So I'm really cutting down the options that white has. So after e3, which is the more solid line, and it does promise white more of an advantage than e4, but the thing with e4 is that black has to play incredibly well to not screw it up. And here e6 is the main move, but I quite like bishop g4. Takes, e6, and the main move for white is to castle or play knight c3 or develop in some manner, but queen b3 is an interesting move that I've had in the past. And I believe the book move is knight to d7 for black, which is meant to give compensation. But I play a very unusual move. Actually, no, sorry, this is the main move. Bishop takes knight, defending b7, doubling the white pawns. Yeah, and here is where knight bd7 is the main line. But I don't play that. I play queen c8, guarding b7 artificially. But I'm also lined up with both white bishops, and I can always play c5 very easily as black. Possibly after I castle. And to be honest, white does have long-term prospects with the bishop pair, but their bad pawn structure and the issue of what to do with the king should give black an okay game here. So I was thinking maybe this would happen, but instead my opponent decided to play bishop g5, going into a kind of torre attack system. While I have played knight e4 in the past, I don't know this line too well. It's one of the only lines I don't know that well. Therefore, I thought e6 was a good decision, leading into Queen's Gambit type lines after c4. But instead, white played e3. If they play knight c3, I would be very happy to transpose into a French if white were to play e4 straight away, which knight c3 indicates you're going to try and play e4. So we would trade, and then bishop e7 is the critical move. A trade, and while bishop takes is becoming very popular and has been popular for years, I think it's now become the main move, or is extremely close to being the #1 option now. But I still play the sort of old line, knight takes f6, because I generally know what I'm doing with castling. And even though queen e2 is the main line, I've started to experience a lot of white players doing castles kingside, and then c3, just locking down the dark squares and having a small space advantage with a little bit of pressure on my king side. And after bishop b7, while black is essentially equal, white does have a slight pull on the position. So this is also a possibility. It's a transposition battle in the opening. Instead, though, white played a more modest setup with the move e3 here. So this could mean a few things. White could be going for a London system type position, or a Torre hybrid, with bishop d3, c3, and castles kingside. They could also be going for c4, so preventing me from taking c4 without white being able to recapture. Or they could even be not entirely decided yet, and could play moves like h4, going for a Simon Williams style hack on my kingside. I thought bishop e7 was a safe move. Bishop d6 may be a touch more active, but I don't like my knight being pinned in this bishop g5 type of position. I'm very willing to move my knight to e4 later in the game and trade bishops. Bishop d3 is indeed played, very natural move from white, although it does make it seem that they will not play the move c4, because then I would gain time on the bishop by forcing the recapture. Knight bd7. I'm not going to play knight c6 in these systems. I could play c5 first, then knight c6, but I found that my knight tends to do better when it's able to defend f6, also have c5 under control, and also occasionally just play knight b6 and then knight c4. This is a harmonious way of developing my pieces. Knight bd2 is played by white. I play c5, so I'm putting the question to white: do they want to capture me? Do they want to play c3? Do they want to ignore me in castle? All those moves are valid. And in the game, they played c3, but if they had taken me, I've had this game several times against very strong opponents, and generally I've done well. Knight c5 is the move I do, trying to get the bishop pair, and if white allows it, I will take the bishop. Bishop b5 check is a move I've had a few times, but I never feel like black is under any real pressure. Bishop d7 captures, and I believe computers and also some of the people I've played have said they expect me to take with my c knight, just simply re-establishing this sort of harmonious piece development. But I feel like it's not active enough. Queen takes d7, castles, and then castles. My knight on c5 can jump into e4 in the future, sort of gaining a bit of space. Also, I've got a ready-made open file. I've got the c file for my rooks. And I just have this nice pawn structure in the centre. Both of my central pawns on e and d are still on the board, whereas white only has one central pawn. So in terms of pawn structure, I'm slightly better. But this did not happen, actually. In the game, it finished rather anticlimactically, because white played c3, so they're going for a kind of setup that's similar to a London system. Later to play e4 or c4, depending on which side of the board they want to gain the initiative, or to attempt to attack and coordinate their forces. The e-pawn will be pushed if they want to attack on the king's side, and the c-pawn for the queen's side. Then I castle, and as you may see on the right hand side, it says game drawn by agreement, because I knew if I drew I would very likely come first place with my opponent, definitely qualifying for the British. And to be honest, because these games are not FIDE rated, because as no over-the-board chess has been played for nearly a year now, they can't really do FIDE tournaments that are rated as such. So nothing was really on the line except by offering the draw. The only thing that I may have wanted to play for is first place outright, which I would have got if I'd won. But to be honest, I didn't really mind, because the top 12 players get through to the British Championship finals. So coming first or coming 10th is the same. And it turned out on tiebreaker I came first anyway. But the game, just to try and make the video longer than just a few minutes, the game could have continued castles, and I've had a few matches where I've played h6, which normally I'm against making a pawn move in front of the king, but in these particular positions it is actually very useful to put the question to the bishop. Does it want to go to h4, which I believe is strongest, or does it want to go to f4? And also there are some tactics where white can play knight g5 or bishop takes h7 then knight g5, and this cuts out those options. And also, as my bishop is not on g4, it's on c8, which is arguably worse, I don't need to fret about playing the bishop on g4 back to h5 back to g6, and then if they take my bishop on g6 I would have to take with the f pawn in this situation. But because my bishop isn't outside the pawn chain, that's no longer in my mind as a factor. So instead I would probably continue with b6, which I've had maybe 5 or 6 times in over the board standard play chess. Queen e2 has been played almost every time, and then bishop b7 to try and clamp down on the e4 square. And here, in most of the games I've had, they've actually been draws with players who are around 2100 level. So possibly I'm not quite performing at my full potential. But, you know, white does have the slight edge in these positions. So having a sort of games where I can fairly comfortably get draws, you could argue I'm doing very well as black in this setup. So that was my game. It was agreed a draw on move 7 after castling. Although, interestingly enough, my opponent at move 1 after playing d4 had offered me a draw. And I would have accepted it, but I know that in over the board chess you can't accept draws unless both of you have made a move, and so I wasn't entirely sure if I accepted the draw that the chess.com server, which is where the British Championships are being played on, would actually abort the game or would give us 0. And also the arbiters for the chess tournament may look down on that draw off as being a bit too quick, and they may end up causing a fuss. So I don't want to do any of that. It's been very well organised so far, so I thought let's keep everybody happy, play half a dozen moves or so, and then offer a draw at an appropriate point. And then the moment I offered it, it was accepted. So my next game for the British Championship finals will be on Monday the 21st of December. I will attempt to upload videos by midnight on each of the days, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and see you next time. Bye.